Some people will cheer when you succeed, most will resent it. Growth exposes who belongs in your life and who doesn't, and here's the truth nobody tells you. You don't owe anyone an apology for leaving people behind. If your life is bigger than their comfort zone, your loyalty isn't the problem. Your growth is. Today, I'm going to show you why choosing yourself, holding your standards, and outgrowing the wrong people isn't selfish. It's essential. And once you understand this, everything changes. When you grow, you inevitably start seeing the world through a different lens, and that shift creates distance between you and the people who still see you as who you used to be. Growth isn't loud, it's subtle, it's personal, and it's internal, and that alone can make others uncomfortable because it forces them to confront the parts of themselves they've ignored. When you stop tolerating the behavior you once accepted, people take it personally even though it's not about them. It's about who you're becoming. And when you start choosing better habits, better conversations, and better environments, people who aren't growing will label you as changed, as if staying the same was the goal. The truth is, you're not responsible for maintaining someone else's comfort at the expense of your own evolution. You don't owe anyone the version of you that kept them secure while keeping you stuck. As you rise, you'll naturally drift away from those who refuse to move, and that separation is not a moral failure. It's a natural response to growth. People often expect you to stay small so they don't have to confront their own limitations. But you were never meant to stay who you were just to protect someone else's insecurities. You were meant to grow, even if it means growing apart. When you outgrow people, it usually starts with outgrowing conversations, because the things you talk about reveal what you're moving toward or what you're settling for. You might notice that what once felt normal now feels draining, and what once felt acceptable now feels misaligned with your priorities. Moments that used to entertain you now feel like distractions, and the habits that used to bond you with others now feel like weights you're no longer willing to carry. As you begin valuing your time differently, the people who are comfortable wasting it may accuse you of being distant or arrogant because they interpret your evolution as rejection. But you're not rejecting them. You're rejecting the old patterns that kept you from becoming the person you're now choosing to be. Growth requires new inputs, conversations that challenge you, environments that stretch you, and relationships that push you to rise instead of settle. And when someone refuses to grow with you, the gap between you widens until staying connected demands that you shrink. Shrinking becomes the cost of staying, and the moment you realize that, you understand why outgrowing people is not cruelty, it's clarity. A lot of people think loyalty means staying the same, but real loyalty is staying true to your potential, not your past. There is nothing disloyal about choosing a path that demands more of you, even when others wanted you to remain predictable. People will make you feel guilty for evolving if they benefited from your stagnation, and they'll disguise their discomfort as concern, judgment, or nostalgia. They'll remind you of who you were because it's easier to keep you in a familiar box than watch you build a life that highlights their own lack of progress. That tension is not an invitation to apologize. It's a signal that you're doing something right. Growth exposes what people try to hide, their excuses, their laziness, and their unwillingness to change. When you stop participating in limitations, people feel abandoned even though you're simply refusing to abandon yourself anymore. And when you finally choose to honor your goals, your discipline, and your future, you stop needing approval from people who were never aiming for anything beyond comfort. Outgrowing people isn't about superiority. It's about alignment with where you're heading and honesty about who can no longer go with you. The most powerful thing you can do is allow yourself to rise without asking for permission from those who fear what your growth means for them. You don't have to argue, justify, or convince anyone why you're changing. Growth speaks for itself through your actions, your decisions, and the new standards you refuse to compromise. People who genuinely want the best for you will evolve alongside you or cheer you from wherever they stand. People who don't will fall away, not because you pushed them out, but because they chose not to rise. And that's not your responsibility to fix. The journey to becoming the next version of yourself requires shedding the relationships built on outdated expectations, and embracing the ones aligned with who you're becoming. Outgrowing people is not a dramatic moment. It's a quiet decision made over time to stop dimming your ambition, to stop absorbing other people's limitations, and to stop apologizing for wanting more. Growth demands space, and sometimes that space comes from letting go of those who can't meet you where you're headed. As you begin to elevate your standards, you start noticing the difference between those who are willing to stretch and those who are content with stagnation. Standards aren't just about achievements. They're about the energy you accept, the conversations you engage in, and the boundaries you refuse to cross. When you refuse to lower your standards to accommodate someone else's comfort, it often feels like tension, but that tension is necessary. People will test you, intentionally or not, to see if you will revert to old patterns. But every time you hold your line, you reinforce who you are and who you're willing to become. Standards are not rigid walls. They're the framework that shapes the life you're building. And anyone unwilling to meet that framework simply doesn't belong in your journey. That realization can feel lonely at first, but it's far better than carrying relationships that weigh you down. Growth is selective, and your circle will naturally realign around the energy that matches your ambitions. Choosing who to keep close is not cruelty. It's clarity about the environment you need to thrive. High standards aren't about being better than anyone else. They are about being better than your past self. You start valuing accountability over excuses, action over comfort, and consistency over temporary bursts of effort. The people who thrive in your presence will rise with you, but those who fear discipline, confrontation, or ambition will resist. They might criticize you for being too demanding or hard to please, but their interpretation is limited by their unwillingness to stretch. Your standards are not negotiable because your future depends on them. By staying firm, you create a gravitational pull that attracts hyper-formers and repels complacency. Every decision you make to honor your standards sends a signal to the world about what you're building and who can belong there. And while some relationships dissolve as a result, those who remain are the ones capable of contributing to the life you're cultivating. This is not about elitism. It's about alignment with the version of yourself that refuses to compromise on potential. Setting higher standards also forces you to become brutally honest with yourself about the people you allow in your circle. Some will try to guilt you into maintaining old dynamics, claiming loyalty or tradition as reasons to stay small. Others may disguise fear as care, telling you that your ambitions are dangerous or unnecessary. But you cannot let anyone else dictate what your life should look like. Your standards exist to protect your time, your energy, and your trajectory. Every boundary you set communicates your commitment to yourself, not a rejection of others. Those who respect your boundaries will either rise to meet them or gracefully step aside. The process of outgrowing relationships is often misunderstood as abandonment, but it's actually a form of self-preservation. You're not leaving anyone behind out of malice. You're simply refusing to drag anyone forward who isn't ready. In doing so, you free both yourself and others to pursue the paths that are most aligned with their own growth. When you hold high standards, the world begins to show you exactly who belongs in your life and who doesn't. Opportunities, partnerships, and friendships start to align with the energy you cultivate. Some people will support your growth silently, while others will actively resist it, trying to anchor you to the familiar. Recognizing these dynamics early is critical because it prevents wasted energy on relationships that cannot evolve. The more consistently you enforce your standards, the clearer your path becomes, and the less noise from misaligned people distracts you. Standards are like filters. They allow the right people to enter and keep the wrong energy out. This clarity is not always comfortable. It requires discipline, courage, and sometimes difficult conversations. But the alternative, compromising your vision for someone else's comfort, is far more costly in the long run. Every time you honor your standards, you reinforce the kind of life you deserve and the kind of relationships that will sustain it. Holding people to your standards also forces you to confront your own accountability. You cannot demand growth from others without demanding it from yourself first. If your actions and habits don't align with the expectations you set, your standards lose credibility. True growth is not just about verbal declarations or surface-level improvements. It's about consistency, resilience, and the willingness to do what's uncomfortable. By embodying your standards, you model the level of commitment required for anyone to meet you where you are. People are naturally drawn to authenticity and integrity, and those who can't rise to that level reveal themselves quickly. Standards also create friction, which is necessary for transformation, both for you and for those around you who are willing to stretch. It's in this friction that real growth happens, because comfort never challenges you, but alignment with your highest standards does. Every choice to enforce your standards is a step closer to building a life and circle that reflect your true potential. The more you enforce your standards, the more selective you become about the energy you allow in your life. Some people thrive in alignment with your vision. Others crumble under the pressure of accountability. This is not about judgment. It's about recognizing the reality of human behavior. Not everyone is equipped to rise at the same speed, and that's okay. But your growth cannot be held hostage by someone else's pace. You begin to realize that relationships are either accelerators or anchors, and it's your responsibility to identify which is which. The people who stay aligned become collaborators, cheerleaders, and mentors who amplify your progress. The people who resist become signals, guiding you to redirect your energy toward those who can actually match it. This filtering process is both empowering and freeing because it replaces the weight of expectation with the clarity of choice. Every interaction becomes a test of alignment, and every boundary you uphold reinforces the level of life you're committed to living. Your circle begins to self-select as you enforce your standards. People who respect your time, your energy, and your ambition naturally rise, while those who cannot meet your expectations drift away. This is the invisible work of growth, building a network that reflects the version of yourself you're becoming rather than clinging to who you were. Standards are not walls meant to isolate you, they're gates meant to protect your trajectory. Each gate ensures that only those capable of supporting your evolution are allowed in. And while it may feel uncomfortable at first, you'll notice that the relationships that survive this process are far deeper, more genuine, and more mutually beneficial than anything you experienced before. You learn that quality always outweighs quantity when it comes to your inner circle. By refusing to compromise, you cultivate a network that accelerates your journey instead of holding you back, and that becomes one of your greatest assets as you continue to rise. Standards are not a restriction. They are the foundation of freedom in your growth. Growth is never comfortable, and one of the hardest truths about leveling up is that it requires separation from what no longer serves you. Every new stage of your life demands that you shed old habits, old identities, and old relationships that anchored you to who you used to be. The friction is unavoidable because growth disrupts familiarity, and people often mistake your evolution for rejection. They may accuse you of abandoning them, but the reality is you are simply refusing to stay stagnant for their comfort. Some friendships were never meant to last forever. They were temporary, designed to teach, challenge, or guide you along a specific chapter. Recognizing this allows you to stop feeling guilty when you outgrow certain relationships. Growth demands courage. The courage to say no to things, people, and patterns that do not align with your vision. Without separation, progress is diluted, slowed, and compromised. The people who remain in your life after this process are there because they elevate you, not because you settle for them. And that clarity alone creates space for meaningful, aligned connections to flourish. As you outgrow people, the emotional weight can feel heavy, even if logically you know it's necessary. You may feel the tug of nostalgia for the comfort that once existed, but nostalgia is not a reason to regress. Old relationships thrive on familiarity, and when you step into a higher frequency, that familiarity becomes friction. The people who cannot meet your new energy will resist it, consciously or unconsciously, creating tension. It's easy to misinterpret this resistance as hostility, but it's actually a reflection of their own limitations. You cannot carry the responsibility for someone else's inability to evolve. Doing so will only stunt your own growth. Separation is not abandonment, it's prioritization. You are choosing environments, conversations, and connections that fuel your next level. And the moment you embrace that reality, you start to understand that growth is not a solitary act of cruelty. It is a selective act of self-preservation. Choosing separation is choosing momentum over comfort, clarity over obligation, and your future over the past. Every stage of growth requires evaluation of who you allow in your inner circle. Some people are temporary supporters, cheerleaders for a season who teach you resilience and patience. Others are temporary distractions, people who drain your energy without offering any constructive push. Some relationships last a lifetime, but they exist because they evolve with you, not because they anchor you to the past. The challenge is in recognizing which relationships are which. Growth forces you to pay attention to patterns rather than emotions. You learn to observe who contributes to your trajectory and who resists it. This discernment is critical because energy is finite, and time spent carrying stagnant connections is time stolen from your own potential. Outgrowing people isn't cruel, it's strategic. It's a deliberate alignment of your environment with the life you're committed to creating. And understanding this principle transforms separation from guilt to empowerment. Separation during growth is often accompanied by societal pressure to maintain old bonds. People will call it betrayal, abandonment, or selfishness, but these labels are based on fear and expectation, not reality. Fear wants you to shrink to protect relationships that are no longer reciprocal. Society celebrates comfort and loyalty, but real growth is neither comfortable nor convenient. When you outgrow people, you challenge the status quo, and that challenge is uncomfortable for them. You become proof that change is possible, and they may resent it because it forces them to confront their own stagnation. You don't owe anyone an apology for evolving. Maintaining alignment with your goals, values, and vision is not negotiable, even if it creates tension or ends relationships. Growth is rarely accepted. It is often resisted. And resisting the discomfort of separation is the fastest way to sabotage your own trajectory. The process of outgrowing people is a mirror for your own accountability. It forces you to evaluate whether you are truly committed to your next level or whether you are clinging to old relationships out of convenience. Every attachment that no longer serves you is a weight that slows your momentum. Some people teach you lessons you never wanted but needed. Some challenge your limits so you can discover strength you never knew existed. Once the lesson is learned, the relationship's role has been fulfilled. Understanding that allows you to release without resentment. You begin to see separation as a natural part of growth, not a failure of loyalty or morality. Growth requires bravery to leave behind what is comfortable, safe, and familiar. It also requires patience, because not everyone will understand your timing or your reasoning. Letting go is both a test and a reward. It tests your commitment to your future and rewards you with alignment and clarity. In the act of separation, you find the freedom to focus on what truly matters. Outgrowing people sharpens your discernment in ways nothing else can. You start to notice energy dynamics, the subtle ways some people uplift while others drain. You recognize patterns of limitation versus expansion and begin to prioritize interactions that challenge, inspire, and elevate you. Old habits of overaccommodation fade as you understand that supporting someone else's comfort at the expense of your growth is a form of self-betrayal. Every relationship that remains must now serve mutual elevation rather than familiarity or obligation. This discernment is liberating but can feel isolating at first. You may question yourself, wondering if you're being too rigid or too selective. But eventually, clarity emerges. The relationships that survive this filtration process are the ones capable of supporting your trajectory. Growth demands this kind of pruning because it is impossible to rise while carrying energy that resists upward motion. Separation is the mechanism that allows growth to flourish, and understanding its necessity is a defining skill of successful people. The act of separation also teaches you resilience. Not everyone will understand your journey, and not everyone is meant to. You learn to navigate loneliness without fear because you understand that solitude is often the precursor to expansion. It is in these moments of solitude that you cultivate discipline, vision, and internal strength. When you outgrow people, you must resist the urge to justify your decisions or seek validation from those who cannot comprehend your path. Validation from stagnant energy is meaningless. What matters is alignment with your own principles and ambitions. Separation is a boundary, and boundaries are the language of growth. Every decision to let go reinforces your commitment to yourself and to your vision. You begin to realize that discomfort is temporary, but the alignment you achieve through selective relationships is permanent. Growth is always uncomfortable, but discomfort is the price of clarity, freedom, and progress. The people who belong in your life will either rise with you or step aside, and both outcomes serve your evolution. As you continue to evolve, the emotional intelligence gained from outgrowing people becomes a superpower. You learn to navigate relationships without ego, to recognize energy exchanges, and to respond rather than react. You develop the ability to protect your trajectory without burning bridges unnecessarily. Separation is no longer viewed as loss, but as a strategic act of creation, making room for growth, opportunities, and higher quality connections. Every relationship, past or present, is now evaluated through the lens of contribution versus consumption. You begin to attract people who understand and respect the standards you hold, creating an ecosystem of mutual growth. Outgrowing people is no longer a painful necessity, but a deliberate choice that accelerates your life. And through this process, you discover that growth is not about abandoning people. It's about honoring yourself, your time, and your potential. Choosing yourself is the foundation of every meaningful decision you will ever make, yet it is one of the hardest acts to consistently practice. From a young age, we are taught to prioritize the comfort, approval, and expectations of others over our own ambitions. But real growth, real impact, and real fulfillment demand that you take responsibility for your life first and foremost. Choosing yourself is not arrogance or selfishness. It's strategy. It's the understanding that no one else carries the consequences of your choices except you. Every decision, every sacrifice, every victory is yours to own. And when you make the choice to prioritize your own growth, people around you may resist or question it. They may label your ambition as cold or self-centered because it challenges their comfort zones. But the truth is, choosing yourself is not only necessary, it's the only way to honor your potential. Your life is the only thing you will live completely, so why not live it on your own terms? When you choose yourself, you start making decisions aligned with your vision, even when they are uncomfortable. You stop shrinking to fit the expectations of others and start stepping fully into the responsibility of your own growth. This means saying no to things that waste your energy, avoiding relationships that hold you back, and refusing to compromise your standards for temporary approval. People who have never faced their own discomfort may accuse you of abandoning them, but it is not abandonment. It is prioritization. Choosing yourself requires clarity about your goals and courage to defend your boundaries. Every yes you give to something misaligned with your values is a no to your future self. The friction that arises from these choices is not a failure. It's proof that you are moving in the right direction. When you consistently choose yourself, your life becomes a reflection of your highest potential. The more you do it, the easier it becomes to recognize what serves you and what does not. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it's essential. Choosing yourself also means embracing discomfort as part of the growth process. When you step into your own power, people will test you, consciously or unconsciously, to see if you will revert to old patterns. Friends may guilt you into lowering your standards, family may project their fears onto you, and colleagues may resist the changes you implement. This is natural because your growth shines a light on their stagnation or unfulfilled potential. Standing firm requires mental toughness and clarity of purpose. You must remind yourself that discomfort is temporary, but the alignment you gain by prioritizing yourself is permanent. Every time you resist pressure to compromise, you reinforce your commitment to your vision. People who genuinely support you will rise with you. The rest will reveal themselves. This is not rejection. It is a natural filtration process. Choosing yourself attracts the right energy and repels what no longer serves you. One of the most liberating aspects of choosing yourself is reclaiming your time and energy. Your attention is the most valuable resource you have, yet it is often squandered on obligations, expectations, or relationships that drain rather than uplift. Choosing yourself means protecting this resource fiercely, saying no to distractions, and investing in what truly matters. It means pursuing your goals with discipline and purpose, even when no one is watching or cheering you on. The people who matter will respect the boundaries you set because they understand the importance of self-responsibility. The people who do not respect them are not your responsibility to change. This act of prioritization requires confidence and decisiveness because it challenges deeply ingrained social conditioning. By choosing yourself, you stop outsourcing your happiness and growth to others. You become the architect of your own life, designing it according to your values, vision, and ambitions. And in doing so, you create a life that others can only admire, not dictate. Choosing yourself is also about embracing accountability. Every success and every failure is yours to own, without deflecting blame or seeking validation. It is easy to stay in familiar patterns and justify compromises, but true empowerment comes from owning every decision and its consequences. When you accept this responsibility, you develop resilience, discipline, and self-trust. You no longer need constant affirmation from others because you have aligned your actions with your principles. Choosing yourself teaches you that you cannot control how others react to your growth, but you can control how consistently you honor your vision. This mindset allows you to navigate conflict, criticism, and resistance with clarity and purpose. You begin to recognize that people's discomfort with your choices is not a reflection of your wrongness. It is a reflection of their own limitations. Choosing yourself transforms fear and guilt into confidence and courage. Every time you take ownership of your life, you reinforce your ability to thrive on your own terms. When you prioritize yourself, you start building a life that is congruent with your goals, values, and long-term vision. You no longer live for the approval of others, and your decisions are guided by alignment, not obligation. This creates clarity in relationships, work, and personal development. People who align with your energy stay, those who resist drift away, and both outcomes serve your growth. Choosing yourself requires emotional intelligence, the ability to navigate relationships without sacrificing your integrity or vision. You learn to communicate boundaries clearly, act decisively, and respond instead of reacting. This creates a life of intentionality, where every choice has purpose and every action moves you closer to your goals. Choosing yourself is the cornerstone of freedom because it liberates you from dependency on approval, validation, or external permission. It is the ultimate act of self-respect and self-mastery, and it sets the stage for the life you are always capable of creating. The process of choosing yourself is not a single decision. It is a consistent practice. It requires daily commitment, discipline, and reflection. Every small choice to prioritize your growth over comfort Clarity over approval and action over hesitation compounds over time. These choices accumulate, creating momentum that propels you toward your highest potential. You begin to see life as a series of opportunities to reinforce your alignment rather than obligations to meet expectations. Choosing yourself also inspires others to raise their own standards because growth is contagious. People who witness your consistency are compelled to evaluate their own lives, which often shifts relationships and environments in profound ways. By choosing yourself, you cultivate a life filled with purpose, energy, and aligned connections. This practice is not easy, but it is essential for achieving extraordinary results. Choosing yourself is not a one-time act. It is a lifelong commitment to honor your potential. Ultimately, choosing yourself creates a ripple effect that shapes every area of your life. It strengthens your relationships by clarifying who belongs and who doesn't. It sharpens your decision making because you consistently evaluate what aligns with your goals. It fuels your productivity because your energy is no longer spent pleasing others. It deepens your resilience because every challenge becomes an opportunity to reinforce your commitment to yourself. And it amplifies your influence because living authentically attracts people and opportunities who respect your principles. When you choose yourself consistently, you stop apologizing for your ambition, your standards, and your vision. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is strategic, empowering, and transformative. It allows you to fully step into your potential, live with purpose, and build a life of extraordinary fulfillment. In the end, the most powerful thing you can do is consistently choose yourself and honor the life only you can create.